Hi, this is Deboki, and today I'm going to be doing my monthly wrap-up for August. This was kind of a low-key month for me reading-wise. I did not really get through so many books this month, so I don't really have much of a collective theme. There's kind of maybe some underlying, but it's not going to be like the previous two monthly wrap-ups that I've done. First book I read this month was The Martian by Weir. I am like super behind everyone on this. I know everyone was reading it like last year, especially once the movie came out. Especially a lot of my grad school friends, like this is perfect for grad school people because if you like reading science and you like word problems, this book is basically one long word problem. I watched the movie on a plane like I think in December or something, and I really liked the movie. I think that definitely affected how I interacted with the book. So The Martian, if you haven't watched the movie or read the book before or really heard about it at all, is about Mark Watney, an astronaut who gets stuck on Mars thanks to kind of like a freak accident that sends all of his crew home and who leave him thinking that he has died. And he basically has to figure out how he's going to survive on Mars until NASA can rescue him. And the plot, like that plot is so like, it's really well done. I mean, especially for like in the movie, it's amazing how they managed to make this story that's mostly centered around one guy being alone feel so like dynamic and not feel like so like claustrophobic in a way. Though they do bring in other characters, so I think that helps. With the book, the writing is not really great. There's definitely the feeling of like super stilted dialogue and like just not really great timing with some of the way the jokes land. I don't know, I had a hard time with the writing, and so when I first started reading it, it was kind of hard for me to keep reading because I had already watched the movie and I knew already what happened, so the only thing that would have kept me reading, the suspense, wasn't really there. I did know from reading like Reddit and I think some other spoilers that there was like a major plot point that was not present in the movie. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick around for that. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I read through the whole thing. I don't think it's a book that I'll read again. It's not one that I'm like gonna buy for my shelf anytime soon, but it was really enjoyable. I think that realism that's given to a lot of the science is really cool, even though I'm terrible at like, so yeah, The Martian was good. I'm glad I read it, but yeah, I think it was kind of just that. The second book I read was The City in the City by Mieville. So this is my first Mieville book. I've heard of his books a lot. They're supposed to be really good, like kind of these big, like epic, weird, strange fantasy slash magic realism kind of things. And The City in the City was brought up on the Get Booked podcast. It seemed shorter than some of his other famous books, so that also seemed like a plus because, you know, with an author that I haven't read before, feeling kind of low commitment, that was good. So The City in the City has a really interesting premise. The idea is that it's these two cities that like live in the same space, but like they're kind of like alternate dimension-y kind of, but not really. It's not like one person in one city has like another version of themselves in the other. It's more just like these cities somehow occupy the same space. And there's like a lot of complicated rules around that. The people in each city are kind of supposed to ignore people in the other city and vice versa. If things kind of get over from one city to another, there's a thing called breach that comes and sets in. It's very mysterious. No one really knows like who breaches or like what it is, but it's just this force that comes in and like cleans everything up. So The City in the City starts out with the murder of a young woman in one of the cities, and over the course of investigating her death, the main detective kind of gets drawn into this like longer, bigger conspiracy that takes place over multiple cities. So the world of The City in the City is super vivid. The rules that he establishes to distinguish these cities and kind of how they interact with each other are really interesting. I really liked how the characters were kind of like how they kind of described the ways they learned about their circumstances, and it's so like normal these cities are set like in a version of Earth, so it is like US and Canada have different diplomatic relations with different cities, all of these kind of different factors that are they're really cool. They're really like it really draws you in to have like this very strange setup in the world that like we know. Definitely adds like a sense of like what the fuck. But for me personally, like, I know this is a mystery, I'm just getting incredibly bored of stories that start with the death of a young woman, especially because this is not a trope that happens only once in this book. That was something that was frustrating. And if that's not a thing that bothers you, or if it's only like a mild, even if it's just like for me, like it was only a mild annoyance, like, and I got over it and it was totally worth it because the rest of the book was really good except for like another minor blip. But I just want to say that outright because it is like just something that I'm so frustrated by. And I read that Mieville wrote this book for his mom, who really loves police procedurals, and I totally get that police procedurals are like Law and Order starts off probably 90-ish% plus of the time with the death of a young woman, so whatever, but it's just a thing that I am, yeah, I'm getting a little bored of. But I do still highly recommend this book. I think if you like magic realism, and if you kind of like when fantasy gets mixed in with like more grounded genres like police procedurals, I think it's a really interesting combination of the two, and so I would highly recommend it. The next three are kind of like my poetry collections for this month. If you remember from last month, I read a lot of poetry for the first time, so I am kind of exploring that more. Two of the collections I have still not finished because I learned my lesson from last month. I am not reading them super quickly. I'm kind of just absorbing them like very slowly over the course of some time. One of the ones I did finish was The Nomenclature of All Things by Lynn Pedersen, and yeah, I mean, again, I super suck at talking about poetry. All of these poems, so I'll just bring up the other two and we can get into it. The second one is Life on Mars by Tracy K. Smith, and the last is Histories of the Future Perfect by Ellen Kombiyil. And the reason I was kind of drawn to all three of these is that they're a mixture of poetry with a lot of science imagery. So I had started reading Life on Mars, and it's like very sci-fi, a lot of space. Nomenclature of All Things brings up a lot of biology, like kind of like a lot of naturalistic biology. There are themes of like grief and miscarriages in there, but also a lot of like different references to famous biologists and naturalists. So it is really interesting. And Futures of Histories Perfect, I kind of am still just starting. I feel like it's more like physics-y of the three. I'm not quite sure yet, but I am really excited to kind of see this combination of poetry and science. So many times I think a lot of science likes to consider itself separate from the arts. There's something about like the idea that because we are objective in our field, even though we know that it's beautiful and there's all these gorgeous images that you can get out of it, we want to keep it like distinct from, you know, subjective things like arts. Except, of course, science is subjective if we are doing it, because we are people, we are not robots, and we don't know how to completely disentangle our own experiences and opinions from the observations that we make. So that's why I really love seeing things that are like so much more on the subjective side, like very much just coming up with images that come from personal experience combined with scientific imagery. Hopefully maybe when I kind of finish all of them I can get into a little bit more of this. We'll see. I can't really make any promises because yeah, I'm still kind of working my way through them. So that was my August wrap up. Like I said, this was a lot shorter than normal. It was a much more low-key month. But I think September I've been like already kind of getting into. I'm excited for September. So bye.